What's going on there, YouTube? And welcome to Fresh Comic Stories. Guys, this is the channel where we sit down and cover different kinds of comic book stories from Marvel, DC, and even IDW as well. But today, we're going to do a full story. And what that means is that we have covered a lot of different comic book stories on my channel, and sometimes those stories get told in multiple videos. And so now we're going to go back and basically combine all those videos together to tell one complete story. Like today, we're going to cover the complete origin of Iron Man in the Ultimate Marvel Universe. It was done in two separate videos, Volume 1 and Volume 2, because that's how Ultimate Marvel gave us the origin of Tony Stark in the Ultimate Marvel Universe. And so I do hope you enjoy today's video. To begin today's storyline, we pick up years ago with Howard Stark, the father of Tony Stark. And this will be our first appearance of the character in the Ultimate Marvel Universe for us. But we pick up with the character right now meeting up with Maria Sierra. And I hope I pronounced her last name correctly. The reason why Howard Stark is meeting up with Maria Sierra is to show her a new kind of armor. And this is not your usual kind of armor, because this armor is just made up of bacteria that is painted on a test subject. And this armor can protect the person from any form of harm, but also destroy the metal when it comes into contact with that metal. The major problem with this project is that the bacteria starts to eat the person's flesh after wearing it for 15 minutes. That is the reason why Howard Stark called over Maria Sierra, because she is working on something that could help someone regrow lost limbs. Howard Stark wants to combine their two projects together to make his new body armor work. We then pick up with Howard Stark, his wife Lonnie Stark, and also Zebediah Stane. This is where we come to find out in a couple pages that these two are working together to take away Howard Stark's company away from him. With Zebediah buying half the stock already, and Lonnie is planning to get a divorce to gather up the other half, which then these two will basically have full control of the company. Now we skip forward a couple months to the point where we find out Howard Stark and Maria Sierra are now a couple, and the divorce for Howard Stark and Lonnie Stark is in motion. But we pick up with Maria Sierra right now walking into her laboratory to work on her project. And we come to find out they are testing the monkeys first. Here's the thing, the monkey does not seem okay, because the serum was just supposed to regrow lost limbs or cells, but now it's growing new cells and his little body cannot take it. But when Maria moves in to check up on the monkey attacks Maria, and some of his infected blood from the serum gets on Maria. Now at first she starts to feel sick and she thinks it's because of the monkey, but she comes to find out real quickly that is not entirely true. She comes to find out that she is pregnant with Howard Stark's child. At first, she does not want to believe it at all, but when she throws up because of the morning sickness, she can now confirm she is pregnant. The problem is now the serum she was working on is inside of her, and it could affect her baby as well, because this serum was not ready to be tested on humans just yet. As months pass by, we do see a couple things happen. One of the things that happen is that it is official. Howard Stark has lost his company to his ex-wife now, Lonnie Stark, and Zebediah Stane. This is a very important part right here for the whole Iron Man story, because we do see Lonnie Stark run over to become a couple with Zebediah. While that is going on, you have Maria trying to fight the serum that is inside of her, because her body cannot take it at all. But she now tells us that the serum has now infected the baby. Instead, with the baby, his neural tissue is changing, It is turning his whole nervous system into one huge brain. This explains Tony Stark being one of the smartest people in the Ultimate Universe. With his whole body being a living brain, he has a high level of memory capacity. But thanks to his mother's serum, he will always be in chronic pain. The only way to handle that pain is Howard Stark's armor. Tony Stark's body will literally be a living brain. But when Howard Stark runs back to the office to get his armor to give to his son to save his life, that is when you have Zebediah Stane walk into the laboratory to inform Howard Stark and the rest of the staff that he also now owns this project as well, which is very huge. But the thing is, as soon as Zebediah says that, the phone rings in the laboratory, and it's one of the doctors calling to inform Howard Stark that his wife, Maria Sierra, has died in the hospital. And that's the end of part 1. With Howard Stark hearing about the death of his wife, he rushes back to the hospital to check up on the baby. Of course, when he gets there, he sees the doctors delivering the baby and wonder what is wrong with him, because the baby is not crying. The baby is screaming because it is in pain right now. Remember, Maria said the baby will always be in chronic pain because the serum she was working on has infected the baby. And so you have Howard Stark rush into the room, takes the baby, and gives the baby his body armor to help deal with the chronic pain he is feeling right now. He then rushes out of the hospital, taking the baby with him and calling it Antonio, aka Tony. Now, the big part about this chapter right now comes up because we come to find out that Howard Stark made sure to never patent anything that has to do with the bio armor. So when Zebediah Stane took over the company, that is the one thing he was unable to get from Howard Stark. But we also find out that Lonnie Stark, the ex-wife of Howard Stark, is now pregnant with Zebediah Stane's baby. We then jump over to Howard Stark and Seema, and I really hope I pronounce her name correctly as well. To me, it is Seema. But right now they are boarding a boat to go into hiding, knowing that Zebediah will do anything to get everything he can to make his own body armor, or his own bio armor. But as soon as Seema and Howard Stark leave by using the boat, we see Zebediah's men grab the other assistant from behind, which his name is Nero. Nero gets grabbed from behind by Zebediah's men and gets taken to some random location. And since Nero was there since the beginning of the project, Zebediah believes he can make Nero talk about how to remake the project. And so you have Zebediah use a new tech called the lid. Now this was made to drain all the information from somebody's mind, and it does do that to Nero. But the thing is though, it also lobotomizes him as well. Zebediah does send him back to Howard Stark as a message that he will sooner or later will find Howard Stark in the baby. We then jump forward 4 years, and we see that Tony Stark is still wearing his blue bio armor to help deal with the chronic pain he is feeling since he was affected by his mother's serum. We also come to find out that Tony Stark has an IQ that can match a teenager, and he is only 4 years old, which is huge. Now the big thing about this part of the story, before we jump over to the next chapter, we come to find out that Zebediah is still controlling Nero. Even after 4 years has passed by, Zebediah made Nero through a mental connection to go into the room of Tony Stark and give him over to Zebediah's men without Howard Stark looking. Because again, Tony is the only thing left of the bio armor project. And so you have Zebediah's men take Tony Stark to this unknown location and try to use the same project on Nero, on Tony that was used on Nero, the lid project. Now, while Zebediah is trying to use the lid project on Tony, they come to find out it is not working because his whole body is his brain. And so the lid is only focusing on his head, which is only a small part of Tony's body. And so it's not working like it should. But before Zebediah is able to do anything else, out of nowhere, you have Howard Stark and a bunch of men, I guess are like special forces, barge into the room, take down everyone, and break Tony free. Now, while that was going on, somehow Tony Stark's right foot gets cut off. But after a couple moments have passed, Tony Stark's right foot regrows back. Now, we come to find out in a one-page setting is that Lonnie, the ex-wife of Howard Stark, but now the wife of Zebediah, had a son. And this is where we get introduced to Obadiah Stane, which in the main Marvel universe, he becomes the Iron Monger. But we learn that Lonnie and Obadiah Stane is saying goodbye to Zebediah because he is now locked up in jail. Now we do jump forward 10 years after the incident, and we pick up with Tony Stark when he is a teenager now. And he is going to a high-end school as a way for him to get the best education he can get. But again, Tony is smarter than all the other kids in the school. But we do get introduced to James Rhodes, aka Rhodey, in the Ultimate Marvel Universe. Now when Tony meets Rhodey, he is right now being picked on by a bunch of kids for being different. Well, for him being black. But you have Tony kind of step in to save Rhodey from the kids. Now the big problem with Tony helping Rhodey is that he just made things worse, because those kids will come back again and do something worse because he stepped in to save him. But after getting some food together, they do become friends very quickly. We then jump over to James Rhodes and Tony Stark arriving back to Tony's house to show a project to Rhodey. This project is supposed to be some kind of armor that could help protect Rhodey from those bullies. But when they walk into the shed of the house, we see Lonnie has reappeared into the story. But she is looking for Howard Stark because she needs his help with her son. We jump forward to the big thing she needs. She wants to get her son Obadiah Stane to join a very secretive school. Only select students are able to get into. Howard Stark will regain the company he lost to her, but for her to give it back, he has to help her get her son into this very secretive school. We then jump forward to the next day, and we see that Tony wants to show Rhodey the project he is working on. And so you have Tony take Rhodey into the basement of the school to show the project off. The problem is that when Rhodey is putting on the armor that Tony made, the same bullies from earlier have reappeared, and this time they are going to test out Tony to see if he can heal from anything, which means they're going to try to throw him into the furnace that's in the basement. You have the bullies push Rhodey out of the way while they continue to mess with Tony Stark. You have the bullies pick up Tony and decided that they are going to throw him into the furnace to basically watch Tony burn up. That is when you have Rhodey get back up using the armor this time to help Tony and get rid of the bullies. The problem is that as soon as he finished beating up the bullies, a girl walks in the room to see the aftermath, which is the bullies on the ground passed out and bruised. But Tony's body has badly burned up to the point that half his body is mostly gone. And this young girl name is Nephara, but you have Tony call out to her and Rhodey to call his father. And when they call his father, you have Howard Stark tell Rhodey and Nephara to basically give Tony a bunch of water and food to help speed up the healing process. That is when you have the bullies come back with food and water, but then tell us, the readers, that somebody hired them to basically throw him into the furnace. That is when Rhodey tells them that somebody hired them to basically commit murder, and they were sent in as hitmen. Now, when Howard Stark gets there, he basically comes in, grabs his son to get him back home. But by the time Howard has gotten to the school, we see that Tony has completely healed up. You then have Howard Stark talk to Rhodey and Nephara about the fact that they were witnesses in this committed murder scene. And so with that right there, their lives are in danger. And so you have Howard Stark say he is going to send them to the best but secretive school known on the planet Earth, which is the Baxter Building. And this is us being tied into the Ultimate Fantastic Four side. If you remember my first video on the Ultimate Fantastic Four, we learned the Baxter Building is a school full of children working on big major projects, but these projects are weapons that will be given over to the military. But we pick up with Howard Stark taking all 3 children to the Baxter Building to protect them, because this school has guards all around them. There is no way anybody can break in and kill Tony, Rhodey, or Nephara. While they are riding the elevator up, they are introduced to Obadiah Stane. Now you can tell right off the bat that Obadiah Stane is crazier than his father. The reason why I say that is because while on the elevator, he touches Howard Stark's suit and picks off a small string of hair to use later on in the story. We then see Obadiah Stane trick 2 other students of the school to go outside to show them some new project of his. But in reality, it was a way for him to throw the 2 kids off the side of the building, which of course kills them. He gets away with their deaths by claiming that they were going to commit suicide as some kind of suicide pact. But he was trying to save them, as he says. But this is Marvel showing us how crazy and sick he is. We did get a small glimpse of the Iron Man armor, meaning that Tony has been working on the armor ever since he was a young boy. Now, with part 5 of this book, we come to find out a few things in this book actually. One of the first things we come to find out is that the War Machine armor is being made, but it's being made by James Rhodey himself, which is huge to see. Because in the main Marvel universe, Iron Man made the War Machine armor. But in this universe, you have Rhodey working on the armor right now as a young adult. Which, by the way, something else to point out, we are now at the point where everyone is a young adult, maybe in their early 20s. While James and Nephara are working on the War Machine armor, you have Tony still working on the Iron Man armor. It is still not ready yet to fly. Right now, all it can do is just hover, but also protect whoever's inside the armor from any form of harm. We also come to find out that Tony and Rhodey have made a deal where once they are both finished, each of them will give over the other person their project. But you have Howard Stark tell Tony that he will not do that because technically Howard Stark owns the Iron Man project. We then pick up with the prison that is holding Obadiah Stane in. Remember, he was locked up years ago for trying to kidnap Tony Stark when he was just 4 years old. But you have Obadiah right now doing kitchen duty for his prison. But you have a random man walk into the kitchen, shoot the guard who was watching over Obadiah in the head. You then have this man take Obadiah outside the prison, but to only use a device that will basically rip Obadiah in half, which of course would kill him off. We then jump back over to Howard and Tony Stark getting ready for some kind of dinner party. Now the topic does come up about Tony having an adult drink, but you have Howard say no, since drinking does affect the brain, and since Tony's body is completely his whole body, it could affect him in some kind of way. But while Howard Stark is talking to Tony, you have Howard Stark's assistant walk up and tell him about the whole Obadiah situation. But as soon as Howard walks away, that is when Tony grabs a drink. We then pick up with Howard Stark right now meeting up with his lawyers. Now, this is why I say earlier about the hair being picked off his suit by Obadiah Stane would play a big role, because that is when you have the lawyers talk about the device that was used, which ripped Obadiah Stane in half. But they also found one piece of hair on him, which of course belongs to Howard Stark. He is being framed for murder, which of course does put Tony Stark now in charge of the company. And that is how Tony Stark got control of the Stark company. But to wrap up this video, we do get a few more pages of Tony Stark kind of taking over his father's business, but while he's kind of, walking into the office, he does see a boat that has been taken over by a bunch of terrorists. And so he's kind of like, you know what? It's time for me to test out the new Iron Man armor. And so this is the first time we get to see Iron Man in the Iron Man armor. And he does go over there to save the people on the boat who was being held hostage. And so it's kind of like, okay, this is the ending for Iron Man 1. We end the storyline with Iron Man becoming the owner of Stark Corporations. The question is though, what happens next? And we don't find out until Iron Man Volume 2. The second half of Iron Man's story, and we'll cover that in a different video. And so guys, please leave me a like down below, and also subscribe to the channel for more content to come in the near future. Also, any suggestions on books I should read, well, let me know in the comments below, because you never know, your suggestion could be a future video down the road. But guys, I'll see you on the next comic book video. So Ultimate Iron Man 2 storyline picks up a couple hours after the ending of Ultimate Iron Man Volume 1, where we saw that Tony used the Iron Man armor to save the day because there was a boat that was being held hostage by a bunch of terrorists. They were going to use this boat to send in a bomb to blow up Stark Towers, but luckily Iron Man was there to stop that. Now here comes the big problem. After Tony Stark had used the Iron Man armor, the whole world saw it. And so you have all these different organizations asking the American government to investigate Stark's company, because that tech is something no one else has. And so a lot of people are scared of what Tony Stark is building with his company. But here comes a big thing though. Tony Stark does not care about what other people think about his armor. Instead, he wants to figure out who in the world was trying to blow up Stark Tower. Now you do have Seema, who is the assistant to Howard Stark, and Tony Stark tell Tony that it was Mark Scott, the CEO of Whiplash Industries. Now this is a different concept on Whiplash, because in the main Marvel universe, Whiplash was an actual Iron Man villain for years. But in Ultimate Marvel, we see that Whiplash is actually a company, and that is it. Now, I do know later on in Ultimate Spider-Man, we get an actual Whiplash supervillain in this universe. This was just an earlier concept of Whiplash in this universe. Now, getting back into today's discussion, we actually pick up with Mark Scott, who was supposedly behind the terrorist attack. He's right now meeting up with the guy named Dolores, which we come to find out that these two guys are working together to bring down the Stark company. Now, we do pick back up with Tony Stark, who is still recovering. Something else for you guys to remember is that Tony in this universe has a healing factor, but it is a very slow process. But while he is healing up from the bomb incident, two government agents walk in the room to talk to Tony. Since the world saw the Iron Man armor, you have these government agents tell Tony they need his armor for a certain mission. Which at first he tries to play the game that it was destroyed, but they know he can make another one. And so he takes them to the Baxter Building. Now we pick up with Tony and the agents arriving at the Baxter Building, but you have them stay behind while Tony goes into the lab. Now the reason why Tony left them in the other room is so he can use them to scare Obadiah Stane, because Tony knows that it was Obadiah Stane who framed Howard Stark. And so Tony is hoping these guards can scare him to admit what he did while Tony goes inside the lab to meet up with Rhodey and Nefara, which Rhodey of course is War Machine and Nefara is another friend of Tony, but also the girlfriend of Rhodey as well. But this is Tony meeting up with them to see if they have another Iron Man armor ready to use for this military mission. Now, of course, you do have Nefara and Rhodey give Tony two armors, which of course, these are the earlier models of Iron Man and War Machine armor. But you have Tony tell the government agents that they will get two armors only because the American government cannot be trusted with one. And so the other one is going to make sure nothing happens to the first one, really. Now, the American government have no idea that Tony Stark and Rhodey will be inside the two armored suits, which you do have the American government tell Tony that the robot suits will be going to some terrorist camp in another country. Their job is to kill everyone at this camp. Now, you do have the agents tell Tony that once the mission is completed, they will come back to pick up the robots, which we all know is a lie. This is where we jump forward to the part you have the military taking Iron Man and War Machine to the terrorist camp to deal with this problem. Now, of course, these suits that Tony and Rhodey are wearing may be just prototypes, but at the same time though, these suits are still more advanced than what this terrorist camp has to fight against them. And so Tony and Rhodey take the camp out pretty quick actually. But after killing all the people, that is when they see that there is a kid there. Which of course, Tony goes up to the kid to talk to him, only to find a bomb strapped to the kid's body. Luckily, Tony is able to remove the bomb very quickly before the bomb goes off. But after saving the kid, they realize the bomb has a remote detonator, which they find two men fighting, which then the kid tells Tony to save his father. Which of course, Tony is able to figure out who is the kid's father after the man killed the other guy. But once they figure that problem out, you have Tony ask the guy if he is a good person, someone that Tony can trust. And the guy calls Tony a friend, which is him saying that he is going to help Tony by showing him something hidden in this camp, which he points to a rock. Now Tony and Rhodey knows this is a booby trap, but Tony has a healing factor, so he will survive whatever it is, which of course it is a bomb that goes off. But Tony was able to get the kid and the father to Rhodey and take the blast head on. That is when he finds some small metal box, which automatically tells us this box is special because it just survived an explosion, which right after finding the box, the military tried to blow up Tony and Rhodey so they can lie and say the robots were killed by the terrorist camp, which again is a huge lie. Which of course, this is where we jump forward to the agents coming back to the base to tell the Stark Company that the robots were destroyed. But you have Seema, who again is the assistant of Howard and Tony Stark, tell the agents that they are lying because the robots were found by Stark's team. Then she goes on to say that they know why they were sent there for, which was find the metal box, because this box is holding plans of making a nuclear device, which the plans also revealed that they are hiding in trucks in two major cities, New York and Washington, D.C. Now you have Seema tell the agents that they are going to have to work with Stark Company to stop these nukes, but also play by their rules. Now something else to point out is that Tony was able to figure out that someone set this up. that they wanted Tony to find those plans. The questions are who and why. Now we jump over to Obadiah Stane visiting Howard Stark in prison, which at first it seems like he is doing this as a way to taunt Howard Stark, that he got away framing him for his father's murder. But after doing a small trick to scare Howard, you have the guards take him away. Now, while the guards are taking him away, you have Obadiah touch the guards with some kind of skin hidden tech, where he is able to kind of drug one of them to do anything he wants them to do, which is, of course, to kill Howard Stark. Now, before we see the guards try to make an attempt at killing Howard Stark, that is when we see that Obadiah is actually working with Dolores, which is the man we saw earlier who hired Mark Scott to bomb Stark Tower. But we now know that these two are working together. Now, the reason why Obadiah is helping Dolores is because Obadiah wants to know who killed his father. Because everyone knows that it was not Howard Stark, but Dolores tells him it was Mark Scott. But while they are talking, you have the guards try to kill Howard Stark, only to severely injure him instead. And so Howard Stark did not die, even though Obadiah tried to kill Howard Stark. Now, Tony gets word of this assassination attempt on his father, but he is unable to deal with that because he gets confronted by the government agents telling him that the people who have the nukes, they want Tony to give up one of his suits for the nukes. Now, Tony says no, but he has a good reason, because he believes he knows who has the nukes, but he will have to work with Obadiah Stane. Now, the reason why this is so important is because Tony knows that Obadiah is working with Dolores, and that Dolores is the one with the nukes. He must be the one. And so you have Tony go and confront Obadiah Stane, which is him telling Obadiah that he will help him bring down Dolores. Of course, Tony threatens him to make him agree to help. But the plan is to set up a fake meeting so the FBI and Tony can get the jump on Dolores. Now, this was supposed to be a plan where you have all of these special FBI agents waiting around for Dolores to appear so they can grab him. But Obadiah gets confronted by Mark Scott, the man who runs Whiplash Industries. But you have Mark Scott tell Obadiah that Dolores is waiting in a car for him. Now, as soon as Obadiah gets in the car, of course, the car has all of these jamming devices inside of it. So Tony and the rest of the crew is unable to hear what is happening inside the car. This is where Tony realized that Obadiah would be the kind of person who would betray everyone and tell Dolores that the Iron Man armor is not a robot. It is really Tony inside the armor. And so you have Tony actually leave where he was hiding and goes down to talk to Dolores himself. Which this is where we see Tony and Dolores make some kind of deal, where Tony will hand over the Iron Man armor and Dolores will hand over the nukes, which this confirms that Dolores is the one with the nukes. Now you have Tony and his team go back up to Stark Tower to think up a new game plan to bring down Dolores. They have to give him the suit in exchange for the nukes, but at the same time try to trick Dolores to make him believe the Iron Man armor is actually a robot, not a man inside the suit. And so you have Tony call up another person named Zimmer, who has made a robot that actually has controls. And so their new game plan is to put this robot inside the Iron Man armor, then have Rhodey control the robot from a distance to hopefully trick Dolores and his man to believe the Iron Man armor is actually a robot inside of it. Now you have Tony go to this plane where you have Dolores, Tony, Mark Scott, and Obadiah go to and wait for the two sides making their exchange in a different location. These people are going to stay here holding each other hostage until the trade is done between their teams. Now, here comes the problem though. Tony's plan does not work. Dolores' team tells him that the Iron Man armor is different somehow than what Tony promised. And so with that happening, Dolores only gives location of one of the nukes, not the other one that he is holding on to. But you have Dolores trick Tony, Obadiah, and also now Mark Scott as well by going to a different part of the plane, where he then sneaks off the plane and trapping the others on the plane with, of course, the second nuke, which this was Dolores' plan all along. He was going to take the armor only to give the location of one nuke, then use the other nuke to kill off Tony, Obadiah, and also get rid of Mark Scott as well. Now you have Tony, Obadiah, and Mark try to figure out what they can do to get off the plane before it blows up from the nuke. Now Tony is trying his best to get the controls of the plane so that they can take control of the plane, because right now it seems like the plane is right now over the ocean in the middle of nowhere. But while that is going on, you have Rhodey using the War Machine armor so he can interrogate one of Dolores' guys to figure out where is Tony and also where is Dolores. Now at first, the guy is not telling Rhodey anything, but then you have Rhodey say he will kill him if he does not tell him where is Tony, which of course, then you have the guy tell him where he can find Dolores, but not where in the world Tony is at. Now, of course, when Rhodey goes to the location, that is when he finds Dolores. But then we come to find out that Dolores is not behind all of this, because Rhodey finds out someone has killed him off. The dude is dead. Someone burned half his face off. But while that is happening, Tony was able to get to the controls of the plane and was able to take over the plane. Now he was able to get the door open so that all of them can jump out of the plane, which of course, as soon as Obadiah and Mark get off the plane, Tony's team can once again track their location since the plane had all of these jamming devices. Now Tony jumps out last to make sure the plane is in a safe distance that the nuke will only hit him and no one else at all, which then he lands in the water and Tony's team are able to locate all three of them in the middle of the ocean. Now we jump over to Seema visiting Howard Stark at the hospital after the assassination attempt, where you have these two police officers telling them it is time to take Howard Stark back to prison, which Howard is able to figure out that this is a lie. And so you have Seema defeat these guards, and basically Howard Stark and Seema get away and leave the hospital, but they go to meet up with Tony at one of their many homes across the world. Now this is the moment where Tony has been able to figure out who is really behind all of this madness, where at first everyone thought it was Dolores since everything pointed to him, but then you have Tony say it would have to be a woman the way things played out, which the only woman he could think it would be is Lori Stain, the ex-wife of Howard Stark and also the mother of Obadiah Stane. She's the only person who has so much hate who would do all of this. She framed Howard, she killed Obadiah, she killed Dolores, had the plans of the nukes, and tried to kill Tony, Obadiah, and Mark on the plane. And so now you have Tony, Howard, and Seema agree they must do something. Now you have everyone go to the possible location of where Lori Stain could be at. And when I say everyone, I mean everyone. Tony, Howard, Nefara, Rhodey, and even Obadiah Stane. everyone goes to confront her about all of these different attacks. Now, as soon as they land, she fires a missile which blows up their chopper. Now, everyone is okay except Rhodey because he was still on the chopper, and so he was badly injured. And Tony has to take him to a nearby hospital before he bleeds out. Now, when Tony comes back to the rest of the group, all of these soldiers appear out of nowhere, and we come to find out they work for Lori. This lady has her own team of people, which she takes her son from Tony and leaves him there with Howard Stark and Nefara. Now, let me tell you how crazy this story gets, though. After Lori men get her son for her, Tony goes after her to finally end this, which of course leaves Howard and Nefara behind, and so which of course they get captured. And so now you have Tony trying to get Obadiah Stane back from Lori, but at the same time, once he does that, he now has to go find Howard and Nefara again because now they got captured by Lori Stane. Because then you have Lori kill off Nefara because she is crazy, but also she tells Howard Stark why she did all of this, because she still loves him in a sick kind of way, of course, because she wanted power, which she gained when she married Howard, but he was a nice guy who wanted a wife and kids. And so she left him for Zebediah, and he went on to date Maria, the mother of Tony. Then she goes on to say, after she left Howard and married Zebediah and gave birth to Obadiah, she realized that she loved Howard still. And she needs to get her revenge, which honestly is a crazy thing because you have no reason to get revenge against him for because you left him. But anyways, she is going to kill Tony and Howard off. Now, the story wraps up with Tony walking in, which Lori is holding Howard Stark hostage, which then she makes Tony take off the armor because she does not know that Tony has a healing factor. And so when he gets out of the armor, you have Lori shoot Tony in the head, which of course he heals up from it and knocks her out. And with him knocking her out, the story ends. Just like that. It really ends with him knocking her out and they walk into the sunlight. And that's the end of Ultimate Iron Man Volume 2. What's going on there, YouTube? Alright guys, so this is the part of the video where I basically sit down and give my thoughts on about this storyline. Now, I really only have two big major problems with this book. The first problem comes with Marvel itself. And what I mean is that when Marvel did Ultimate Iron Man 1, they told the world that this was the first half of the origin story of Tony Stark. They're like, hey, here's Ultimate Iron Man 1, his first half of his origin. And they told everybody this was going to be his origin story. And then we got this book, Volume 2. And they said this is the second half of his origin story. But after this got all wrapped up, you had them come back and say, well, actually, these are not his origin stories. No. We just use these two books to give you an extra Iron Man book. Actually, he has no origin yet. We don't know his origin story just yet. And you're kind of like, well, what the heck? We bought Volume 1 and we bought Volume 2 only to learn that these two books were not his origin story. So what is Tony Stark's actual origin story in the Ultimate Marvel Universe? Now, also, you only had I want to say Ultimate Human reference back to these two books. That's it. I want to say Ultimate Human has one full page that's really calls back to these two books, and that's it. No other Ultimate Marvel book truthfully goes back and references anything from Ultimate Iron Man 1 or 2. Now, my second problem with this book is the storyline. Because guys, this was supposed to be originally a 4-part storyline. As a matter of fact, as you're reading part 1, part 2, and part 3, they're saying 1 of 4, 2 of 4, 3 of 4. But then when you get to part 4, they're all like, well, actually, there's going to be a 5th book. And that 5th book got thrown in at the very last second. And guys, you can tell that they had no plan for the 5th book, because out of nowhere, the main bad guy is going to be Lori Stain, the ex-wife of Howard Stark. And it's kind of like, okay, so what's her reason? Well, because Howard Stark moved on without her. And he fell in love with Maria and had Tony. And him and Tony are doing great things with their company. That was legitly her reason why she was upset at Howard. Even though she left Howard because he was not being ruthless like she was, and she goes on to marry Zebediah Stane, the father of Obadiah, and then get jealous of Howard because he's not jealous of you? That makes no sense. This woman left this man, took half his company from him to only get upset at him because he didn't come crawling back to her and he stayed with Maria? No, that makes no sense. And then she was somehow able to get a whole army, get some nukes, all these different things by herself? No. You can tell this 5th book was thrown in at the very last second. They were like, boop, here we go, guys. We're good. Almost everyone will like this book. No. You should not like this book. If you do, I can see why, because the first 4 chapters are honestly pretty good. But then you get that very end of the 4th chapter, you're kind of like, really? Lori Stain. Out of everyone you could use, you use her. And her reasoning is horrible. But anyways, guys, I'm going to go ahead and end today's video. So please leave me a like down below and also subscribe for more comic book stories in the near future. Also, any suggestions on books I should read, well, please let me know in the comments below. But guys, I'm out of here and I'll see you on the next comic book video. Later, guys.